So we're going to talk about forecasting and pipeline management today, and this is, of course, sponsored by Telguard. And I'm Chris Peterson. I'm a founder and president of a company called Vector Firm, and what we do at Vector Firm is we help security companies with their sales and marketing. We are sales and marketing consultants and trainers in this particular space. If you can go to slido.com on your phones or your tablets. All right, so when I was somewhere between my 8th and 9th grade year, I was over at a friend of mine's house, Jerry Rowland. A buddy of mine, Scott, and I were over there, and Jerry had an older brother who was between his 11th and 12th grade year, and we all played baseball. And Jerry's older brother, Jimmy, was the starting center fielder on our high school baseball team. And where I grew up in a town called Merritt Island, Florida, and it was just a sports haven. And your whole identity as a kid was to play sports for the high school. So Jimmy was one of those, he's one of those guys we all looked up to because he started for the high school baseball team. He also played high school football. So Jimmy, I don't know what it was. One evening we were over there just kidding around doing things that kids that are between 8th and 9th grade do. And we all played baseball. So he grabbed us and took us out in the backyard and showed us this drill where he took a broomstick and a little ball, and he was showing us how to do soft toss with a little tiny broomstick and a little ball to really increase our hand-eye coordination. He was left-handed, he just whack it. And was telling us these different drills and telling us how many to do a day. And I, we were in Babe Ruth League. We didn't do any of this. And I mentioned to him, I said, Jimmy, our coaches don't have broomsticks and small balls. They're like so-and-so's father. And we just go out, and this is the 80s also. This is, nowadays they have the kids have everything. But I said, we don't do this. The coaches don't have us do this. I haven't forgotten this. He stopped and said, Chris, if you keep just doing the things that your coach asks you to do, you're never going to go anywhere. You've got to do these things for yourself to make yourself a better player. And by the way, your coach isn't going to be upset with it if you do a little bit extra. And that really hit me between the eyes. And it stuck with me. But the reason I'm sharing it with you today is I usually give this presentation to salespeople, not to their bosses, not to executives, not to owners. But when I come to this part, I transition into forecasting, and I'll usually ask them, so why do you do forecasting? Because my boss asked me to. Because my coach tells me I have to do it. And the fact is, if you want to be a better sales professional, if you want to have better sales professionals on your team, they need to, and then I showed this slide, you're the one that should be benefiting from your forecasting. Not your bosses. Not your boss's bosses, not your business. It's you. And the reason I didn't delete this from the presentation is because you need to understand that too. You need to create a process where your salespeople are doing their forecasting because it makes them better salespeople. It makes their job easier, it makes their job more fun. I know that sounds counterintuitive. I can forecast and be fun. Well, we're going to talk about some of those things today and how to make it successful and how to make them more successful. Because if you don't, you're just going to have a bunch of salespeople that are running through exercises for you, not for them. And when they do it for you, it's not going to be that good. They're just checking a box. All right? Let's roll. Forecasting and pipeline management. First thing we're going to do is talk about the difference between pipeline management and forecasting. Then we're going to jump into pipeline management best practices. And then the purpose of forecasting. After the purpose of forecasting, we're going to roll into best practices of forecasting. And then finally, an action item. All right, y'all ready? Pipeline management versus forecasting. Anybody want to take a swipe at what the difference is? Lucas.
Pipeline is like your business that you put into funnel, business that you've drunk up, prospected that's in the funnel. And then forecasting is what you project that you're going to be able to do based on what you have in the funnel. Or what you're
Yeah, that's good. That's right. And the reason we go into this is because a lot of people feel like their pipeline is their forecast. And I have, with our clients, we have a program where we build out forecasting processes and give them templates and all that. And we get pushback all the time. We have a CRM system. Why don't we just look in there? Why do we even meet with the salespeople? And there's a reason. So let's talk through it, the difference in the two. So pipeline management, it's an ongoing management of sales opportunities. It's an ongoing management of sales opportunities, and there's no deadline. In your pipeline, there is some type of field probably that says close date. There should be if there's not. But there's no deadline. It's just you're going to look at it and say, okay, this person in this person's pipeline, there's $800,000 of business. Okay? A forecast, it's a stated amount of sales that somebody is going to produce within a defined time frame. It's a stated amount of sales that someone or a team or a company, you could deliver a forecast to your board or to the bank, right? But it's a stated amount of sales that will be generated during a defined amount of time. The way I like to look at it is opportunity management is like staying in shape. You're out there, you're jogging 3 days a week, you're just staying in shape. The forecast is like the track meet, man. On Saturday between 2 and 4, I'm going to compete in these different events. That's the forecast. Opportunity management never ends. It's just an ongoing keeping in shape. Pipeline management, we could get hung up on this for days. If and when are two different fields in pipeline management. So when someone is working on their CRM system or their Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is, they look at date and say, you know what, I think they said that they're going to make a decision beginning of May. I know how these folks are. It's probably going to be the end of May. Someone pushed this out to May 27th as the close date. And right now, it's at the quoted stage in our process, which is a 40% probability, okay? Two different thought processes. When's it going to close? What's the probability it's going to close? If and when are two different thought processes. In a forecast, it's one thought process. I think I read in here, yeah. It's combined into one mental field called probability. In a forecast, you are simply letting people know what is going to close this month, this quarter, this year, and what the probability is of it. So the probability in a pipeline is, what's the probability that this closes for us? What's the probability of us winning this? So for example, you might have, on January 20th is a probable close date for this, if you're doing pipeline management. And we've got a verbal agreement, so that's a 70% closure rate. But if you're doing a forecast for the fourth quarter, you might bring it into the fourth quarter. And you might say, you know what, in the pipeline, this is at January 20th, but I'm going to put it on my forecast for the fourth quarter. But it's not going to have a 70% close rate. It's going to have a 20% close rate. Because, again, if and when are one mental field. I feel like it's going to close in the fourth quarter, but there's only about a 20% chance it's going to close in the fourth quarter. Does that make sense? Because that, seriously, I have conversations over several drinks with this argument. And once it, boom, I mean, it's beautiful because you don't think about it anymore, you just react. Pipeline management is done with a CRM system. Forecasting is done with a presentation. Forecasting is done with a conversation. Forecasting is done to human beings or a human being working with a group and giving them a forecast. And again, I get that all the time. Chris, we got the CRM system. It's telling us exactly, well, why do we have to have these meetings? A forecast is all about a human being committing to another human being or committing to their company or to a bank or whoever. Here's what I am going to sell this particular quarter. All right. Whole question. So if you go to slido.com, those of you that came in a little bit after, just go to slido.com, SLIDO.com, And the event is number 349553. All right, we've had 17. How many are in here? Let's see. 3, 6, 9, 13, 16, 19. All right, most of you have voted. So it looks like 59% of you said CRM. Sorry about the zooming. I don't know why that's zoomed in like that. Or an opportunity management system. 33% say a spreadsheet, another method. Looks like one of you said another method. And we don't manage our sales opportunities. All right, good job, everybody. This is great. Tracy, these are encouraging numbers, are they not?
Absolutely. Love that.
Let's hope they're buying your system. But no, it is encouraging. 5 years ago, what would those numbers have been? Significantly lower. All right, that's all right. Thank you, everybody. So pipeline management, let's talk about best practices of pipeline management. Again, this isn't forecasting, it's pipeline management. So some people think that, pipeline management is a piece of cake. Let's just throw it in a CRM and let it ride, right? And they don't do much. And then some organizations will just make it so complicated that it's just miserable. We're going to talk about some best practices of what we feel you should do. Number one, the minimum fields to include are these 6. The name of the account, the name of the opportunity, the amount of the opportunity, the probability, the factored amount. The factored amount is the amount times the probability. So if the amount is $20,000 and the probability is 40%, the factored amount is, who said 8? All right, $8,000. And then the close date. So it could look something like this if you're exporting it into an Excel spreadsheet. The opportunity management systems, the quoting management systems, the CRM systems will have a report that you can just throw out there. But you see, like 24,555 times 90% is 22,1. That's what gets added up over here in your factored number. But this is okay. If all you have are these 6 fields, that's fine when you're managing a pipeline. A lot of people get so carried away, they got 36 fields in there, and it just doesn't get done, right? Great gets in the way of good in this case. And really those fields, if you were in a session earlier about metrics that matter, most of those fields, this is what matters right here. This is what enables an organization and a sales professional to be able to manage their pipeline. And by the way, when you notice that these dates, there's not a bunch of August 31s and September 30th. Whenever I go, I can tell whether a company manages by quarter or by month because I look at their pipeline, and it's either on the 31st of the month, the 30th of the month, or the last day of the quarter. What I tell people all the time is, great salespeople don't necessarily know their business that well, but every salesperson I have talked to that knows their business is great. So you could have someone who is brilliant, charismatic, and works 70 or 80 hours a week that does a great job and has no, I don't know, it's going to come in on the 12th or the 30th, I don't know. And they're going to be successful just because of who they are. But anybody that knows, that can answer the question, what are you going to close in the next 30 days, and they know when it's coming in, they're great. I haven't run into anybody yet who isn't. When they know their business, I know that they're successful. So if you see a bunch of 831s, 930s, whatever, they don't know the date. They're just pushing it out to the very last day of the month. They need to have a true understanding of when the business is closing. Stages and probabilities, keep these minimal. And I don't like the 50% option. When people make a probability 50%, guess what most of the opportunities are going to end up looking at? 50%. That's 50-50. Keep them minimal. I like this. If it's been proposed, 35%. If you get a verbal affirmation, 70%. If you get some type of confirmation from them, or if it's in contracting, 90%. Keep it at that. Well, what about all the opportunities out there that are, we haven't proposed yet? Well, if you want to add them, that's fine. Give them a 20% probability. I like keeping it clean. It doesn't go in the pipeline until it's proposed. But I understand a lot of people are, well, geez, that takes half of our opportunities and gets rid of them, all right, then add them. But your salespeople are going to be a lot happier if you just keep it here. I like keeping the percentages consistent with the stage. And you're never going to have, none of them are going to be correct. But the aggregate's going to be as accurate as it gets. Here's what I mean by that. Let's go back up to our top bullet point where there's proposed verbal affirmation and contracting. Let's say that you propose somebody like, well, I propose these people, but they never buy from us, so it's not really 50. I'm going to change that to 10%. Now, I propose these people, they've been buying from us for 20 years. That's really at 90%. I'm going to change that to 90%. It's proposed, but I'm going to change it to 90%. That might be more accurate for those two individual opportunities. But if you do that over the course of a pipeline, it's a mess. It is an absolute mess. What ends up happening when you get up to about company-wide, 30 or more opportunities, that all washes out. So and the CRM systems, you can lock it in to where if you have a stage, that probability goes with it and you can't change it. You can't override it. I reckon when I was younger, I said, that's foolish. You should be able to override everything. You should have the power to put whatever probability you want in there. And then I saw the messes that it caused. Each individual opportunity will probably not be right, but when you get all your opportunities together, it aggregates out properly. And then if necessary, if you want to add an earlier stage, that's fine. That's fine. I don't like it because it's not clean, and you got people that want to look better putting every opportunity on the planet in their pipeline because they haven't had a good couple of months. Does that make sense, especially the second bullet? Another thing, another reason for the second bullet is it takes individual judgment out. So let's say you've got 6 salespeople on your team, and a couple of the salespeople are extremely conservative, a couple are very, very optimistic and unrealistic, and they're just putting the probabilities all over the place. So your end pipeline number is dependent on their personality types. Here you take that subjectivity out of it. Well, it's been proposed, it's 50%. I got a verbal affirmation. Okay, it's 70. Keep it by stage, not by probability. All right, now from the earlier session, we talked about the performance index. We'll talk about something similar here. It's called the sanity metric. What this does is this enables you to truly stay sane and just make sure that you're not going to fire someone who is just having a bad couple months, and you're not going to promote somebody who's really a derelict and just had a couple lucky shots. All right, let's go to your, back to Slido, please. One more person. There we go. Okay, so what we have right now at 15 people is 40% said 3 times their annual quota. Whatever makes them sane was 33%, and 27% said whatever the boss says. So we have a room full of bosses, I understand that. So there's not really a right answer to this. What we talked about earlier is that needs to be customized per salesperson and what their particular skills are. But I wanted to ask that simply because usually that number, the 3 times their annual quota, is above 80% when I ask that question. But I think a lot of you were in the earlier session and you knew that probably wasn't the right answer. The sanity metric is real easy, folks. And you're going to get a copy of this, so it's going to be easier to read it than it is to hear me say it. Your quota dollars that are out on the street simply need to be whatever your annual quota is, times the number of days of your sales cycle divided by 365 divided by close ratio. That sounds like something you would hear from The Big Bang Theory. But it's really simple. So I want to share with you, let's go through the idea of having 3 times your quota out on the street, because that's what a lot of people follow. Let's say a quota is $1 million, so you should have $3 million on the street. Sales cycle is, let's say, I don't know, let's say 45 days. Is that good? Sales cycle from quote to close? 45 days. So that's 8 sales cycles in a year. Is that right? 45 days, month and a half, so you got 8 sales cycles a year. So if you have 8 sales cycles a year and you're asking them to do $1 million, each sales cycle you're really asking $125,000, right? So what should be out on the street is really just going to get you $125,000. Because whatever you got out on the street right now and on October 5th has nothing to do with 11 months from now. Because your average sales cycle, we're going to averages here, your average sales cycle is 45 days. So what we need to do is understand that we have to have stuff out on the street to produce $125,000 of business. Now let's say your close ratio is 1/3. Let's say it's 33%, right? If it's 33%, you need to generate $125,000. How much did you have out on the street? I know you guys can do this math, so what concerns me is that I'm not doing a good job of communicating. So if you need to get $125,000 over a sales cycle and a close ratio is 1/3, what do they need to have quoted out on the street? 375. So I've got somebody with a 45-day sales cycle, not uncommon, right? $1 million quota, not uncommon. That conventional wisdom says should have $3 million out on the street. Fact is, they need to have 375. So we wonder why a lot of our salespeople go insane by age 35. And we get even more insane because we're going through salespeople left and right. We got to do the math right. And when we do the math right, we're able to track properly, and we're able to pat people on the back or kick them in the rear end, depending on what the numbers show. Right now, we're kicking people that should be patted and patting people that should be kicked. So the sanity metric, this is what will keep you sane and what keeps them sane. Quick example, quota $1.2 million, sales cycle 75 days, close ratio 38%. The metric 649 on the street. How do you do this? Well, first of all, you as a leader, and Lucas said this at lunchtime, that he needs to meet with the sales director, right? The sales director needs to be meeting with the salespeople, and y'all need to be meeting with the sales director. But the time needs to be on the calendar every single week. Maybe not for you to with the sales manager, but that sales manager needs to be meeting about pipeline management with the salespeople every week. And each salesperson is going to have a different number that should be at the bottom of that pipeline management. In this example, it was 375. The other example was 649. And it's real easy. Hey, man, your sanity metric's it's only at 550. You need to be at 649. That's your magic number. What's happening? Let's talk through this. Okay? But it's got to be on the calendar. You got to make it fun as it can be. You know, maybe bring in coffee. Oh, man. I hate meeting with these guys, but boy, they bring great coffee every Friday. Just make it fun. Do what you can. You will save, I promise, this is going to take 90 days to kick in, but after doing this practice and after your managers do this practice for 90 days, you will save 2 to 5 times the amount of time you put into this. At first, you're just going to be investing time and not getting anything back. So those first 90 days are painful. You're putting in extra time every single week. Your managers are, or maybe not you every week, but your sales managers are every single week. After about 90 days of doing this, they're going to capture, let's say they're putting in an extra 2 hours a week. They're going to capture another 4 to 10 hours a week because of this. Because their pipeline is managed, because it's organized, because they know what's coming in. They don't have to go back and do the, oh my gosh, I got to calculate all this by tomorrow. It's done. All right, let's move to forecasting. So ask yourself 2 questions. 1, is this the purpose of forecasting? And 2, do my salespeople think this is the purpose of forecasting?
I mean, the purpose of work is so you can see how much money you're going to make.
That's one of them, yeah, absolutely. There are many.
Increase it. That ultimate goal is to increase it.
Is to increase it, and you can't increase till you know what you're getting in, right? And you got to have partners and whatever. So this is not it, but this is what a lot of people think. Yeah, I got to do it. So you, meaning leadership and sales, should be the beneficiary of forecasting. And this, again, is what I show salespeople. But I want you to think, when you go back, they should be a beneficiary of forecasting. They should be able to understand what they're going to do next quarter, next month, and because of that, then they're going to be able to be better professionals and better at what they do. So every salesperson, and I mentioned this earlier, that knows their business is great, they're successful. What your forecast could be right now, this is what a lot of organizations are, it's like a gazillion open files in your head. And what that does is it creates chaos, it creates nervous energy, it creates being not focused, because you don't know what's coming in next month. You don't know what's coming in next quarter. Even if you're going through the exercises, if the exercises are always inaccurate, then you're in trouble. And those open files keep you from listening really intently to that customer. It keeps you from listening really intently in that interview for a new operations director. It keeps you from being creative. Those open files take away from what you do on a day-to-day basis. They really do. But if you can forecast, then what you can do is have, look, I know what we're going to be doing. Now I can go focus. I can come to ESA and learn something in network and find ways to grow the business. Understanding your forecast enables you to do other things. It just makes life better. It reduces your anxiety. Good or bad, knowledge helps calm anxiety. There was a great study back. Well, it's kind of a sad study, but it was very curious outcomes back during the Great Recession in 2008 through 2010 or so. They did a study of people who were laid off, and their anxiety level was significantly lower after being laid off. So the fear of not knowing what was going to happen was much worse than it actually happening. So good or bad, at least you know, and you're going to feel better. And when you feel better, you're going to perform in a much more effective way. So the objectives for the company, not just for the salespeople and the leaders. Look, it helps you with budgeting. You guys are service businesses. Geez, think about the resources that you gotta just, well, I don't have to tell you that. Don't think about it, because then you're going to start thinking about things going back on in the office. It helps leadership communicate to the banks, to the investors, whoever it might be. I've got a client in Birmingham, Alabama, once a quarter, and before COVID, they used to bring me up for this. Actually, we went up in July too, so we're getting back to it. But once a quarter, their salespeople come into their conference room and they present to their leadership as though it's the bank. They say, look, we're bankers. And they come in dressed up and they run through their forecast. And what they tell them is, this is what we have to do. We have to go to the bank and we have to go to our investors and tell them what you're going to sell next quarter. So it helps leadership be more confident. And it also enables leadership to allocate the resources that are necessary to close business. And again, it reduces anxiety. I keep hitting on this anxiety thing, and please don't think I'm a mental health consultant. I'm far from that. But what I do know is anxiety takes away from performance. And we are sales consultants and sales trainers, and if you are going to perform at a 70% level or a 90% level, that impacts our results. So we don't want you to be anxious. All right, best practices of forecasting. We talked about the pipeline management earlier, right? Is this a forecast right here? What do you guys think? Nope. That's a pipeline. That's a pipeline. Forecasting is a conversation in which sales tells leadership how much and what will close in a defined time frame, usually monthly or quarterly. A forecast is not a CRM report. A forecast is a conversation and a commitment to the company. So back here, let me just give an example. We might be 70% for September on this one, okay? And that's probably when it's going to close. But I know my company needs this before August 31st because the bank's going to come to them right after Labor Day, and we need to bring everything we can in by August 31st. So even though that's in my pipeline, because I know that the close date's probably going to be here, I can maybe pull it into August 31 and put it on my August forecast, but the probability is not going to be 70%, it's going to be, let's say, 30. That's a forecast. Forecast is a commitment. It's a conversation. It's a presentation. It is not an opportunity pipeline report out of your CRM system. It's a human talking to a human making a commitment. All right, some of the best practices. I like having a commit number and an upside number. And it's amazing, after doing this, let's say 3 at the minimum, but definitely after 6 times, the salespeople end up getting really, really good. And their number always ends up in between those two. If they're going too far above, then if they're going above their upside number, then they're not pushing their upside number enough. And they need to push their upside number. They need to let you know, hey, if I really get lucky and we pull off some real miracles here, I'm going to do $800,000 this quarter, but I'm only going to commit to $350. Now you know where they're at. Now, if they say, I'm going to commit to $350, I know, and I'm only going to get, my upside's $380, and they come in at $450, and this is consistent, well, they're not putting themselves out there enough. They're not pushing it on the upside. Commit, though, you don't want them pushing it. You want them, hey, this is what's coming in. And you can bank on it. Commit is the number you can bring to the bank. Upside's a reasonable number that you may sell, and the probability is the percentage chance the order closes during the time frame. If you get anything from this session, the difference in a pipeline is, the probability in a pipeline is the probability that you will get it. There's a 90% chance we're going to get it. All right, what's the probability you're going to get it by the end of October? Oh, geez, that's probably about 30%. That's the difference in a forecast and a pipeline. In a forecast, you are giving a probability of when it's going to close and when it's going to close this month or this quarter or this year, whatever time frame it is. And if you can roll that down to your salespeople and get them to understand that, boy, they become really good at this. And they enjoy it because it means something. So, how does this work, this forecasting, over a course of, let's say, a quarter? So, let's just say that this is, this looks like a pipeline management report, but this is your forecast after you're done with it. And you committed for this quarter to do 241,000, your upside was 312, and this is what you got. This looks like an erg, doesn't it, Tracy? This is what you got right here, right? Close date 8/26, 9/12, 9/16, and you just update this on a regular basis for management. The sales team does. It's real easy. Okay, well, hey, these folks, the lobby cameras for these folks, this just went from, they just gave me a verbal, goes up to 70. Now I want you to watch something. Right now, my commit's at 241, my factored is 288, my upside, so I want to keep that factored definitely above the commit. All right, well, I'm up to 35 to 70% on that. Boom. Look, I just went up to 297. This one just closed. I got that. That's at 100. This one went to 100. Now it's going to come in next quarter, but it's 0% for this quarter. So guess what? It's 0% on the forecast. At this distribution company, it went from 35, we're up to 70. All right, so we're still floating along pretty well here. Now, what if something gets added? Something out of the blue comes up, which happens all the time. Sure, let's just add it in here. And just insert, put it in here. ABC company, whatever, for $23,000. They love the proposal. They said it's in contract and we're ready to go. Guess what? I just went up to 316. This is how it works in an ongoing basis. And as you get closer to the date, that number, that factored number, ends up becoming more and more and more real. So if you're able to, and hopefully you do this with a tool besides a spreadsheet. I just use a spreadsheet because it's easy to show. But if you're able to lock into this type of forecasting practice, it's going to be September 28th, and you're locked in. By September 20th, you have a pretty good idea. Especially because your folks are going to get better and better at this.
So forecasting, let's say the salesperson comes in, it's the end of Q3, they're going to give you a forecast for Q4.
Yeah.
And the sales cycle is 45 days. It's only half of Q4.
That's right.
So then how do they, what would that look like when they're forecasting what's not even an opportunity yet?
Yeah, that's tough.
Based on trailing data?
What I would do if our average transaction size is 45 days, I would do monthly forecasts. Because looking out a quarter out, you can do some based on historical data. Okay, if I need to have $300,000 closed every quarter as a salesperson, going into that quarter, I should have in my forecast at least 150. I'm making this up, right? But if you're forecasting out a longer term than your average sales cycle is, you're going to have to do some, kind of what retailers do, right? Based on these other metrics, we feel like we're going to have this strong of because a retailer sales cycle is, 35 minutes. I walk in, I buy stuff, so they've got to project according to other data, and that's what you'd have to do. But in that case, what I would recommend is, since a 45-day sales cycle is all you have, I would back it up to having monthly forecasts. That would make more sense. Okay, here is the action item. Email Kim at admin@vectorfirm.com, and she will send you the sanity metric tracker that I just showed you. One of the things I like doing is, and I didn't do it for that spreadsheet just because I didn't want to make it too complex, but I like building a cell up there.
Should your forecast be based on the individual reps' amount of money that they want to get for the year?
Now you're talking about planning, right? You're talking about goal setting and planning. That's totally different. Yep. But the question was, shouldn't your forecast be based on how much money they want to make? And that's different. That's goal planning with them. This is about a forecast of looking ahead a month or a quarter. On this document, one of the things that maybe I should have done it for this, but I like putting a field. Okay, you got factor to date. I also like putting right here another slot here that says closed to date. And it just chooses anything that's at 100%, you add it up. That way you know where you are for the quarter. And as I said this morning, if you like material like this, we have something called Vector Firm Academy. It's a sales training platform. It's a subscription-based. It's the highest you would pay is $48 per person per month. And we've got right now 51 classes in there. There's a new class every month. Every class includes a webinar, a quiz, an action item, a podcast interview with somebody, videos. It's all gamified. You can track what your salespeople do by points and all kinds of cool stuff. But just check it out, vectorfirmacademy.com. If you decide to sign up, it's real easy to sign up. You just pick how many people you want, put in your credit card, boom. But it's going to ask you for a coupon code. And if you put ESA in there, you get 10% off. So if you got 1 to 3 people you want to join, it's $48 per person a month. I think 4 to 7 is 44, and then 40, then 36. It goes down. But that 10%'s forever. So you get 10% off, And it's canceling time. I told Lucas at lunch, I said, just join, download the document, and cancel. Yeah.
So if you're setting, your upside number, like we make our salespeople make goals on what they're going to have. That's not the same as your upside number. So that's actually another number. That's a totally different thing that you're doing, setting goals versus.
That's right.
It seems like a lot.
It's a lot, but your goals are set one time. And then that's where opportunity management comes into play. So you set those goals. Look, here's your goal. Forecast is reality. And this was taught to me pretty much with what does Jim Collins say? The brutal truth or brutal honesty. My boss, the president, looked at me one day, and we were in Washington, D.C. It was around a group, and he said, look, Chris, I don't care if you tell me $1, as long as you sell $1 this quarter. I don't care about the goals. I don't care about, I want to know what I can tell our investors that we are going to sell this quarter. That's all I care about. If it's $1, tell me $1. And you're not going to get fired this quarter. If it's $1 next quarter, you're going to get fired if it continues. But that was the difference. We make goals, right? And that's what you need to do on an annual basis. But forecast is a business management exercise. Yes, Tracy?
I was just going to make some comments because there was something that triggered me
Mhm.
That's non-development.
Right.
But, you know, you said 10% because I, whatever, made a contact.
Mhm.
Or then I go up for, 60, 70, whatever it is. As long as the team understands what that means within the organization, they get on the page.
It's a great point, Tracy. And I'm sorry I didn't put that up. I didn't put it up for a reason. I forgot. No, I remember when I was in charge of sales for a manufacturer, and when they said, I think it was 70, might have been 80, but it was a certain stage that was a verbal affirmation, I would look and I would look up and say, okay, so you're good with us ordering supplies and parts. Because that's, once something hit 70 or 80, that's when we started ordering. And so they knew what the business did with these probabilities. With you guys, maybe it's planning technicians or project managers or whatever.
And I think you can use the same, so doing that in pipeline and doing that in forecast really helps people understand the difference between those two things.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just triggering those thoughts.
Yeah, that's great input.
One question I have, if you set your CRM up or your sales organization up to where you have a stage before in your funnel for proposed, how do you actually know what that is if you're not proposing a number, right? It's
Right.
an arbitrary feeling,
It's an arbitrary feeling. That's one of the reasons I don't like it also, but
but,
Lucas, you know one thing, sorry, jump in, but it's on that thought. The sales stage can be different from a pipeline definition and a forecast definition. And that's where you get the rubber meeting the road, because the stage of the sale can move forward or backward,
right,
as can the percentage that you believe you're in. You know, say on the forecast side, that I am promising I'm gonna bring this in at this amount or this date. You know, so the sales stage and where you are in that process could be different.
got it, yeah. Okay,
Or if your CRM only has a certain amount of stages, like for me personally, I like to say, you couldn't possibly be at 50% yet, if you haven't done a site walk, you haven't done,
sure.
like, if you tie those percentages to, well, first you have to make a call, then you have to do the appointment, then you have to do a survey, then you have to propose it. And they say, well, it's 90%, well, you haven't even done the first 3 steps yet, you know?
Right.
Yeah, maybe it is 90%,
Right.
but right now, and they can organize it so when they look at it, they can say, oh, yeah, I have to do so-and-so for that guy because I haven't moved the needle forward. Like, oh, yeah, I have to do that
Sure.
appointment, or I have to give them in here, or something like that.
Yeah,
so something to bring up, because this made me realize that my presentation might have been a bit confusing around something. So on pipeline management, remember I said the stages need to be locked in with the probabilities and don't change them? So that's for pipeline management. But on forecasting, so if I'm at verbal affirmation stage for April, but I'm going to bring it into the March forecast, well, that might not be 70% for March. So you can, during forecasting, that probability can change.
Sure.
Okay, so I hope
That's based on,
But should you?
that's just based on what's the probability this is going to close. You're going to get a yes, and you're going to get a yes this month.
But from a design aspect in your funnel, should you have a simpler proposed verbal contract, you know?
In your funnel, you do. So, but again, forecast, you hit print on your CRM system, you look at what you got, and then you take that and say, okay, here's my forecast. I have our clients do their forecast on a PowerPoint. And that's the most ridiculous, especially a geek like me that loves Excel. And the reason I do is because I want them to get completely out of the pipeline and think, here's what's coming in April. What can I bring in? I want them to really think and create a report for leadership. And it's not that cumbersome, but. The main thing that I want you to walk away with is that forecast and pipeline management are 2 different things, and you should do both, and you should make them as easy as you can for your salespeople. All right? Well, I hope so, because everyone looks like, what did that guy just say? Thanks, everybody. Any other questions? Awesome. All right. Well, I hope to see you all at the happy hour.